Hi, I'm Nate Shear, and you're tuned in to MindForce, the podcast that's all about love, life, and learning. We're here to remind you that your mind matters. Today, we have Demetrius Pagan. I met him at a suicide prevention class, and I've been over 15 years, and I've been through a lot of classes. You got to go through them every year. It's one of those annual requirements, but the passion, the creativity, and the drive to see other people connected really forced me to reach out and, learn more about Demetrius, or Dr. Pagan, as his email address is. So I had to go ahead and ask more because he was able to engage and keep people connected and got people out of their seats. Maybe they didn't want to get out of their seats, but they did. So Demetrius, thanks for coming on the show. I'd like to give you a chance to introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And why are you here?
Oh, man. Hey, well, a great intro. I am, as you stated, Demetrius Pagan. I have been in the military for 19 years now and haven't said that out loud in a while. So I've seen a few iterations that we talked about the suicide prevention training, and I'm really here just to, again, facilitate and open up the conversation. And thank you for having me today. Married, 3 kids, background, been teaching suicide prevention for a couple of years. I actually started back in the previous installation. So I'm excited to be here. We are hanging out in the UK, so getting adjusted. So all in all, having a great day. Look forward to it.
Absolutely. And if anybody wants to know if the Air Force is a small world, I go to my in-processing brief out here in the wonderful United Kingdom, 2 hours outside of London, and I'm sitting in this briefing. I look over to the row next to me, leaving a base in Florida where I met Demetrius, and there he is. He's sitting right there in the in-processing briefing with me. So even though you move around the world across a very big ocean, you're still bumping into people that you know. And we say like medical's a small world, because it's a specific career field, but even across the board, there's not that many of us that, raise our hand and jump in to serve. So it's awesome stuff to be able to meet people. At this point, I think I could land anywhere in the world and probably, put it on Facebook and find 10 people that are there. So it's a good stuff. But Dimitri, I just wanted to see if you had any questions for me before we start the interview.
See, the biggest question I had today for this one, changes daily. One of the major questions I had today was, what have you seen as far as suicide prevention that has worked, and what have you seen that you didn't think was as impactful as it could have been?
Okay, yeah. I think the biggest thing is connection, and I'm sure that's a cliche thing to say. I feel like sometimes I'm a walking cliche, and I say things that are super cliche, and I sometimes feel like a big cheese ball. But if it's what I truly feel, that's what I have to say. But I think it's connection. And I think it's smaller things than we really think. And I don't know how exactly to tackle that. But some of the smaller things, like grabbing coffee in the afternoon with a couple people, you're just, you're tired, you're kind of over it for the day. And at 2:00, you go and get something. It has nothing to do with the coffee, nothing to do with the tea, but that a connection in the car on the way over, maybe being able to vent and things like that. And I know that's not training, and I don't know how you get that out. But I really think, even though it does sound cheesy, lowest level type stuff, but I think that really is what it is. It's the people that are beside you, getting through the things. We don't live normal lives at all. We go on deployments and TDYs. People have to, watch our kids or pick our dogs up. And so it's one of those things I think we have to be side by side. And the things I think don't work, is when the mindset is not there. And again, I wish I knew how to fix that because I hate bringing up problems without a solution. But I think it's just the mindset. If you're walking in the door and you're just wanting to check the box, as I know, when I've gone to different trainings and whatnot, my coworkers like, let's go get this over with. And it's like, it's unfortunate. That's what it's become, where it's every year and it's just something to get over with. And that's what I really appreciate about your training. You had that intro and you got people, telling stories right off the bat and that connection. I think that's what it is. You want to hear that someone else is going through something where you can connect. I think us being in the military, we're A-type personalities. We raise our hand because we like to go get stuff done. And if you like to go get stuff done, it's difficult to ask for help and you feel like you're not supposed to, which is completely not true. You should definitely get help. But I just think that you are like, I'll fix it. I'll take care of it. I'm not going to ask for help. But if you start to identify there's other people that are, struggling with things and going through things. And that's one reason I struggle a little bit. I was thinking about this the other day and talking with somebody, forget who it was. We were talking about the DSD system and some of the opportunities that are out there, like SHIRT and recruiting and different things like that. For those positions, we've kind of come to the point where you need to be perfect for those positions. And not that you want a dirtbag in those positions, of course, but I feel like I'd rather have my shirt maybe have some trouble and, dust himself off and pick himself back up. If my shirt's firewall 5 and never had any issues and whatnot, and maybe he has stuff at home. I mean, I guess, work and life are completely different. But I almost feel like we should allow people to bounce back from things. We don't do that very well. That was way longer than you probably wanted. But what do you think about, having a shirt that's had some trouble and being able to connect with that person?
Not too long at all, sir. I think that's very important. I think when we talk about the shirt, being able to have that conversation with somebody that might be going through something, might have had a hiccup, might have had a rough time, and being able to say that, hey, look, we've seen this, we know this. Hey, I went through it. A lot of the leaders that I've seen, I've been to, worked undershirt duty. I've been to the symposium. And a lot of the stories you kind of hear from them is, hey, when I was an airman, wasn't always perfect. I did this. And a lot of them saw examples that weren't so good and wanted to step into that role, or they had a really positive experience with the shirt and they were like, I want to do that for somebody else. I know if you've ever, I've listened to Senior Master Sergeant Robinson speak at one point. And he talks about his first duty station. He showed up to the wrong base. Totally 100% wrong base. And he said, nope, that's it. I'm done. He cut off the plate at the wrong installation and they worked something out. But the fact that he's been in for 16 years still tells that story of that first supervisor that helped him out, that first shirt that worked with him when he didn't have to because it wasn't his troop. He wasn't even the side to the installation, but that one person went out of the way to help him out. I think it's important to be understanding and know that. And a lot of that comes from having those experiences and seeing those experiences and knowing that, hey, look, you're not going to be perfect. Every airman isn't going to be perfect, but we're going to get through this and we're going to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of those things, there's a story I tell. I don't remember if I sort of told it on this show or not. I don't really like to share it because it wasn't the best moment of my life, but I think it really drives home that point. I had the Red Cross notification for my dad passing away. I'm in Guam. I'm out in the middle of the ocean on an island in the middle of nowhere. And I was able to get that notification. There was only one flight that left the island at 6 a.m. every morning. So I was able to go home at like 3 or 4 in the afternoon, go home, pack my bag, wake up, and then get on this flight to race against the clock to see if I could get there before my dad passed away and be, with him in those departing moments. I didn't think about anything. I just left. And it wasn't until I got back where all that started to dawn on me, where we have a community and, we have things different than we have in the civilian sector. Like I think in the civilian sector, would someone have watched my house? Yeah, absolutely. But when I got back, someone has swept and mopped my floors. Someone put my dishes away. Someone drew a picture of like my dogs on the adventures they had while I was gone that was hanging on my fridge. Like these things you just can't, like they would have kept my house from burning, I'm sure, if I worked at Google or Amazon. But the level of like community that's there, and these are people that are not my best friends, they're not my drinking buddies, but they knew they needed to step in and take care of things. And that's something that just, stays with me. I've been in a few different career fields that, make a decent amount of money, which is in no way to toot my horn. But the reason I stay is I remember moments like that I've had throughout the years. And I want to make sure I'm giving it back and paying it back, because I was able to walk out, not think about anything, focus on the thing that was most important at that time, and walk out of my house. Like I just don't know where else you go where you can do that and have my floor mopped. Like that's even an added bonus. It's just insane that they came together, and I don't even know who orchestrated it, or I still don't know to this day, like how that all came together. But, they knew that the focus was elsewhere and I could leave. So it's wild to me. I think that community, and going back to the deployments and things like that, we should all be able to step in and take care of each other. And like I said, you don't have to be best friends or, have all the same likes and things like that. But if someone needs you to, be on their family care plan, which is kind of funny in general that we sign people up on these things that we may or may not barely know. But the military is a pretty wild place. But before we get too off topic, let's jump into the interview. I wanted to start off by, starting with the suicide prevention. Like, how did you kind of get involved in that? And, what drew you to that?
Honestly,
and MRT, right?
I think I'm actually going to finish MRT training first week in November. So I'm heading out to do that. I've been trying to get that done for a while, but COVID And then they had distance learning classes. And I was like, nah, I want to go to class. I want to physically go to class and actually sit through the curriculum. So I waited. So
Nice.
I finally got a slot opened up. So I'm headed out first week in November. So yeah. But as far as suicide prevention training goes, like everybody, we did it every year. We're checking boxes. And it actually, say what you want about it, but it actually wasn't until green dot training happened where I was like, okay, this is better. This is moving in the right direction. I want to try to be a part of it, but they didn't tell anybody about green dot training. They didn't tell anybody that, oh, we're looking for trainers. You just show up and people have been trained and you don't know where they came from. And you're like, hey, how do I get on the list? And they're like, oh yeah, your unit. And nothing ever comes down. So once we got away from that, I was still interested. So it's actually when I got to Herbie, I started looking into it, because when we first get into over at Herbert, they make you do safe talk. And then I said, okay, I want to be a safe talk instructor. And they said, well, you got to be ASIST trained. So I went and became an ASIST trainer. I went and got ASIST training done. So I was like, okay, let's do that. And I never got a chance to do the safe talk class, but through the ASIST training, I began to make connections. And then I got into actually being able to teach suicide prevention. And I wanted to teach it because I got tired of it feeling like everybody was just going through the motions. When you show up at the meeting, when you show up at the briefing, and they're like, okay, this isn't going to be long. We're going to get through this. Everybody knows everything. Let's just try to get through it. Please participate. And it turns into the most mundane thing. And I'm like, as an instructor, if you want to get out of here, then I want to get out of here. If you don't want to be here, of course I want to be here. And so I try to bring that approach that says, okay, what do we know? What don't we know? And how do we make this training not feel like it's going to continuously drag? I'm making a little bit more than a checkbox. So hopefully it sticks with somebody at the end of the year. That's kind of my goal and my perspective. And hopefully I've done okay. Classes are hit or miss, but hopefully I've done okay. And I'm trying to continue to grow that skill set to put that messaging out there. So that way we as a community can be more engaged and involved when it comes to prevention. A lot of us like to think that we know, but if you ask somebody, okay, cool, how does that conversation go? We sit down and we go through the things that we always learn, and it ends up being a checkbox. But when you actually dig into it, it's like, it's like, okay, I got to ask care escort. Cool. What does care look like? I'm going to show that I care. How? I'm going to sit there. Okay. Yay. What else? What does that look like? We can check the box, but what does that actually look like? I'm going to ask them directly. Okay. How does that conversation go?
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you walk us through ACE and like what it would actually look like ACE, instead of a hypothetical?
So, yeah. I've gotten a few more trainings. I'll stick with the ACE basics for right now, or else we're going to have a 2-hour podcast. So when we get to the ask portion, the primary thing you want to look at is being direct with the question, because most of the time, I ask people all the time, I say, you good? Good? You good? You good? And if you ask somebody, are you good? Are you okay? How's everything going? Is there something you want to tell me? Everyone can look at you and go, I'm fine. It's fine.
Living the dream.
Living the dream, yes. If you think about when you ask somebody, how's their day going every day, and you're walking past, a lot of people go, good. It's a quick, short answer. But if you sit down and ask somebody, have they thought about suicide? Have they thought about taking their own life? And many caveats to get to that question. Some people are scared to get there. Then that, again, involves more of the conversation. Well, hey, here's what I noticed. I noticed you're not coming to work on time like you used to. I noticed that. I know your father passed away a couple of weeks ago. How things going with that? What have you been thinking? I ask people now, I'm like, how are you doing mentally and physically? How are you doing mentally, physically, emotionally? And they'll start talking. I'm like, okay, cool. That covers the mental. How are we doing physically? How are we doing emotionally? Mm-hmm. Another way we talked about having that conversation with some other training I had was saying, hey, normally when people do this, they can potentially think about suicide. Are you thinking about suicide? So that way it's not the straight, direct, short answer. Get them to think and ask the conversation and look at them. And if you actually think that, hey, I'm not sure if the answer is truthful, stick and say. It's not just a short, are you thinking about committing suicide? No. Okay, cool. Have a good day. A little bit more involved in that. And then we get to the care piece. And the important thing about the care piece is that when you're looking at the care piece, it's not about the emphasis I'm going to take. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's about the individual. And I say that because a lot of people, they get to the point where they want to help. It's just natural. We want to help. We want to be there. But then you start being pushy. We have to take you to the chaplain. We have to take you to the church. We have to take you to mental health. We have to take you here. We have to take you there. When you have shown the care piece, it's about giving them the space and the time to work through that, to be able to help them make that decision. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
when we talk about helping them get there and actually, all right, so tell me what's actually going on. Let's have that conversation. Let's get some stuff out. Why do you feel this way? The goal is to not solve their problem. The goal is to not fix their problem. If somebody's sad because, oh, I'm having use money, because a lot of us understand money issues. Oh, I'm having financial problems. The goal is to not go, oh, well, I can cut you a check right now and solve all the problems. It's not the point of it. The point is, hey, they're at a place right now where they are thinking about taking their own life. They're looking for an exit, right? So being able to talk them through that and listen to what they're actually saying, not judge them because they had a rough patch, not judge them because they got a divorce last week and then they went and gambled away 10 grand and now they can't pay their bills. This is not the part of the conversation where when you know somebody or you feel that somebody is going to potentially harm themselves or take their own life. That's not the point of the conversation where we want to begin to start going back through and judging them for all of everywhere you made a mistake. So the care piece is about actually listening, not judging, and also allowing them the time to work through the conversation so we can get to the escort piece, which is, hey, there are facilities that can help. Hey, there's places we can go to be able to assist. And like I stated before, if anybody's sending my training, it's like sometimes the care piece and the escort piece looks like this. Hey, do you want to go to the hospital right now? And they go, no. It's like, okay, well, we just sit here. We wait it out. I'm going to listen. I'm going to give you the time and the space you need to try to work through this, but you're not going to do it alone. And I think that's
so care really looks more like receive mode, right? I think one thing, going back to us being A-type personalities, I think we want to fix it. So I think that's a really good thing that you brought up, like cutting the check and whatnot. We want to jump in there. We either want to say like, oh, I've been there and, it's not that bad, or I've been through something similar. But from what you just said, care looks a lot more like receive, right? You're just sitting there kind of absorbing. You don't want to really say all that much, because I think sometimes we want to make sure we have the right words, or we want to make sure we say the right things. But really, you could just be there, right?
Yeah, you could just be there. And it's going to depend on the individual. That's another thing, too. And being able to listen and kind of understand what the individual needs. Because if we think that everyone just needs me to sit here and nod, and you sit there and nod, and now they think you're not engaging or you don't care, you're zoning out, if you're always trying to interject some sort of point, now they don't think you're listening. It all depends on the person, and to take that opportunity to be able to listen to what that person needs. Sometimes you can ask them, okay, what do you need? Where can we help? You know what I mean? How can we,
that makes sense.
What do you need to get through this particular moment you're in right now? Because that's what it is. It's a moment. It's usually the moment in time. How long that time lasts may vary, but it's, for a lot of people, it is a moment in time where they're looking for an exit and they don't see another one. So give them the time and
that
help
makes
them
sense.
to be able to get the assistance that they need. And I think that being in receive mode is a very good way to put it. I like that. Being in reception mode. We're going to take stuff in. We're going to evaluate, and we're going to help this person get what we need. I've done suicide first aid is the one I'm working on now. And one of the big things that they talked about in that is that a lot of people that have repeats when it comes to going back through the cycle of suicidal behaviors, there's like a lot of them, the issue is they don't get the help that they need when they needed it. And everybody is not on the same pillar. Some people just need to talk to the champion. Some people need to go talk to a medical professional because they might need medication for depression or other mental health disorders. And we can't assume that everyone just needs to take a moment, take a breather, and tell me about their problems. Everybody's on different apps. Some people just need somebody to talk to and to actually feel like somebody cares, somebody's listening. And you can be that person
makes sense.
if you just take the opportunity. And the ACE model doesn't have to go in order. I've said numerous times. You might have to bring somebody in before you get somebody to start holding that conversation. You might have to show people that you care before you get an actual response from the question. So definitely use it as a guideline, not as a rule book where we have to boom.
Yeah, not as rigid, right? I'm
Yeah.
curious from the stories that you've heard, if you have heard stories, like how do you transition? Because you had said like when you're walking down the hallway, you see somebody and you're asking how they're doing, you'd have to, those are very potentially deep and dark conversations and questions. So that can't happen in the hallway. You need to transition to a point where can we go grab coffee or something like that. But I feel like back to like we were talking about earlier, being A-types and wanting to, not get help. How do you transition when you're asking the person, they're like, no, I'm good. No, I'm good. And you're like, hey, let's go grab something. No, I'm good. And you can't really, I guess like you kind of touched on that just now with it's different for every person, but what are some general ways where you get them from the office, the hallway to a place where that conversation can be had? Because they're not going to have it in the hallway. How do you break through that? Where like, no, I'm good.
Well, here's a big one too. It doesn't always have to be you. You might notice it. And we talked about the escort piece. The escort piece, there's other avenues to get there. It might not have to be you. If you know, hey, I know this individual hangs out with these 5 other people over here. I might go talk to them and says, hey, what's going on this weekend? What's going on this afternoon? When you guys go to lunch, just have a conversation with him because I'm concerned about X, Y, and Z. The goal is to actually get them to a place where they can have that conversation. Unless you built up that rapport, that might not be with you. And being aware of that, on what that relationship is. If it is somebody with you, then you really just have to, from what I've seen, is be patient with it, but also don't drop it, if that makes sense. If somebody's like, hey, I don't want to go anywhere. I'm good. I'm fine. Cool. Where are you going? Oh, I'm going to take care of this. Okay, cool. Let's go. Like I said, everybody's different. Seriously, if somebody's like, I'm going to go do this job on the flight line. Okay, we're going to do this job on the flight line. Sounds good. And because it opens up an opportunity to be able to start that conversation, because they might have other things on their mind. They might be busy. It's the same method we're trying to use with getting them out to the coffee and things of that nature. They don't want to go out to coffee if they keep saying they're fine, and really follow up with that. Doesn't have to be invasive. Doesn't have to be, are you good? Are you fine? You fine? Are you okay? You okay? Are you fine? Sometimes it's just a conversation. Well, tell me what's going on. How was your day going? How's your day yesterday? How's your girlfriend doing? How's your dog? How's your cat? How's your family? Just actually taking time to have a conversation. And from there, you can kind of glean, all right, here's might be what's going on. They seem real hesitant to talk about the girlfriend or the mom or the dog, or the dog's been sick and they haven't said anything in a week. We have got no shop updates for the dog. Little things like that to try to pick up on, to be able to continue having that conversation. Again, like I said, show you care before you get to the ask. A lot of this is going to be depending on the relationship with the individual. So taking the time to do that, even in that moment. And again, hey, I might have other stuff to do, but I see that this person's looking trouble, something's looking off, not just dropping it and being able to follow through.
That makes sense. I'd like to transition back to the classes that you've held and things like that. You've taught quite a few. I'm curious, when you teach different levels of the class, do you tailor it? Is mental health and mental fitness kind of across the board, or how do you tailor for the young airman class to the leaders of the base class?
So a lot of my trainings are the same. It all depends on what the focus is, depending on the group. For instance, when I teach FTAC, we'll teach the FTAC, first term airmen that are coming in. For those that don't know the acronyms that we keep using. So the first term airmen is their first base, first installation, and they have to go through a whole lot of briefings and trainings. And one of them, unfortunately, is me. So when I go teach them, it's more along the lines of getting them prepared to think about intervening in certain situations. It's not strictly focused on suicide prevention, even though it's a part of it, but it's showing them the importance of intervention in general versus specifically hey, suicide prevention when you see your airman, when you see this, that, and any other. When I teach a mixed class, I'll point out the seniors and the senior enlisted. And one of the things that I point out to them, we talked about the mental health piece. One thing I point out to them is when you're on top, no one asks you, are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I've asked the colonel sitting in the first, second row. I was like, okay, colonel, who do you talk to? And he pointed to his vice commander. He's like, I talked to him. I was like, cool, who do you talk to? You know, and because I want to get it out there that the leaders still have stressful days and have people that they go through. You know what I mean? It's like if the
Yeah.
colonel has somebody that he goes to, it's like, and you're in a shop with 10 different people, 15 different people, you know, there are many different places for you to be able to try to make connections and try to hold those conversations when you're going through something. You don't have to hold it all in. You don't have to be by yourself. You don't have to be on the island. Another little things I try to do when it comes to different tiers is I try to bring it up to other people too. I've trained trainers before. It's like, don't forget you have civilians in the audience. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're looking at talking and focusing strictly on military and what military has to go through, I was like, you're alienating part of your audience that still needs to train because they're still, even though there's civilians working on base, there's still people working on this installation, going through things. You know, they're still part of our extended family, if you will. So definitely don't alienate the audience that you're speaking to. So other than that, I actually try to get the lowest tier airmen and the highest tier, just try to get them involved. You know, even the colonels have sat through this, they've gotten briefings. Try to get them involved in the training because again, they're bored, they're engaged, and they can be able to comment and share stories in the communication and the training. It opens it up for other people to feel comfortable doing so.
Yeah, that
Hopefully that
makes
answers your
sense.
question.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm curious over the years, we're both, been in over 10 or 15. You're closer to retirement than I am, but right behind you. What do you think about the trend and the trajectory from, I mean, you touched on it briefly where you saw Green Dot come in and, how are things changed over the years in this mental health realm?
I think they are slowly but surely we're turning a corner with the training to where it's becoming less of a checkbox. I think as far as the military, we are trying to set it up to be, and I don't know all the studies and stuff that go into preparing to do another training, but I think we are trying to get it past the point of doing the checkbox. I don't think we're there yet. I've said it before. I've have certain issues with how we're supposed to do the training because I think they kind of, in some ways, there's, hey, look, we need to make sure that we cover these particular topics and we're sensitive to all these issues, and I get it, but sometimes that takes away from us being able to connect with the various audiences that we have. And I think that's important for us as facilitators. And I think that we're getting to a point to where they're seeing that and they're allowing us as leaders or as people or as airmen or as NCOs or as officers to be able to look at our formations and the people that we have and be able to address the issue and adjust it to the groups that we have. I think that's kind of the important thing because a lot of people will sit through the class and go, this doesn't apply to me. I don't understand this. So how do we make it relate to individuals right now in the UK, where our training is totally different. They're doing a totally different thing that I think on paper it works. I think on paper it looks good. Execution is a different story. And so again, just getting here, I'm shaking the tree a little bit, but I think that on paper it sounds like a good idea, but the expectation on execution is a lot different. And I've had conversations with the leader back in the other installation too. But I think we're moving in a positive direction. I just think they really need to hone in and stop trying to check boxes with training. We need to make sure we talk about this. We need to make sure we talk about this and actually get into what are people going through? What are the problems that are arising that we can try to address, and how can we better prepare leaders and the people that are around them. And I'm not saying that it just has to be NCOs, but on us as leaders in lowest class, E1, you're around a bunch of people in lots of aspects, you're a leader at that point. How can we better equip the masses, the airmen and big A airmen and little A airmen? How can we equip them to be able to identify and be able to hold those conversations to help people to be able to get them to resources that we need, and then on top of that, we have to have resource availability. That's a big thing. It's like, hey, I want to take them to mental health. Cool. Mental health has an appointment in 2 weeks. That does not help me, brother. So, being able to have those resources available, because that sends the message that you have help. I can tell you this right now from experience. When you tell somebody to go to mental health or go talk to the FLAC or go talk to somebody and nobody's available, it seems like nobody has time for them, and it does not help what we're trying to push, what we're trying to promote.
Yeah, that makes sense. I got a loaded question for you. Maybe it's unfair, but if, you had all the money and all the power, how would you change the training? Would it be more often, or what, how would you attack? There's probably no perfect solution. We're all a little bit different, but what's one thing you'd love to change in the training?
I would honestly like to, one, have trained trainers. I would like to be able to equip trainers with the knowledge and the resources to be able to bring their varying experiences to the training. What I mean by that is one thing that we don't get, I'll tell you this right now, we don't get the data. We don't get the data. I've had people ask me, it's like, hey, how are we trending? People want to know, does the training in its current iteration work? We don't know because we don't have the data. Somebody has it, but they're not giving it to us. So I think being able to have certain data points to be able to make the adjustments. Like, for instance, I hate breaking up COVID. COVID was a big deal, right? So if things are happening during COVID, what are they seeing? Hey, we're seeing that people are having financial issues. We're seeing that people are feeling isolated. So now we know how to better address those conversations in our training in real time versus focusing on 2 to 3 year old statistics with how do we get after it. We know the root thing is connection, right? We know the root foundation of it is going to be connection. That's been through every training I've been to. That's been the core, whether it be working to better build the connection or building off the connection that's already there. The root has been having connection with people. But now how do we take that and be able to equip the people that are doing the training, that actually care about doing the training, and be able to equip them to go out there and hold those conversations, answer questions as necessary. I don't think everybody has to be quote unquote formally trained. I think it works out better, like we talked about previously, if we have people that have struggled a little bit, have had problems, have seen some things, if you will. Not somebody that's coming off a doctorate program that I know all of the scientifically, that's I need somebody who can connect with me on, like I said, base level. I need somebody to connect on base level. All the money in the world, I would put money towards resources and research, and be able to equip us with actual data and numbers about what's going on, because lots of us don't know the root cause. We talked about warning signs and risk factors, right? How about you say you've been in 15 years?
Yeah, I'm coming up on 16. Yeah.
Coming up on 16. Since you've been doing the training, has that list changed?
I don't think so.
They're going to give away their stuff. They're going to look sad in the daytime. That list hasn't changed. But what you say in the last 16 years, people's situations and circumstances have changed.
Yeah. And one thing that's always kind of bugged me about this, and I've talked to a couple different people about this, is we talk about the warning signs and all those negative aspects. I don't think we do a very good job of the success afterwards. When you're in the darkest hole that you've ever been in, when you're in the downward spiral, you want to know that there is the hope, there is the positive, there is the light at the end of the tunnel. And for some reason, we don't do that. I kind of wish we'd throw up some stories, maybe someone comes in or we record them. I probably prefer real people versus recordings because of that connection piece, right?
Yeah.
but show the people that have overcome. Because we dwell on the negative for an hour and then you leave, and you, even if you came in with a positive attitude, you still feel kind of like, did we just talk about negative stuff for an hour? I don't even feel that good. So I wish we did both aspects. Everything is spectrum and balance in life. We harsh on this. This is what's going to happen. This is what you're going to see. They're going to give everything away, and they're going to go quiet, or they're going to start randomly hysterically laughing when they were a quiet person before, and all these things. But let's talk about the bouncing back, the one step after another, and slowly regaining who you were and getting back to that. I would love to see some success stories built in.
So when I'm sitting there talking about having the money to do the research, that's part of it too. We don't have a lot of that we have that I know anyway. There's not a lot of statistics on people share their stories, but there's not a lot of numbers on when somebody intervened. These, hey, 30 people last year were at the point where they were engaging in suicide behaviors, and someone intervened and said, because whatever at that point, it doesn't get tracked as well, I guess. So that's part of it too, to be able to say that, no, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We don't have to stay here. Statistically, more people who engage in suicidal behaviors do come out on the other side. Statistically, more numbers, but as we say, like, we're trying to get less than one. Try to get to that net zero balance. But no, I agree with you. And being able to, if you could find people willing to share their stories, that'll be a good one as well. If you could find people willing to share that, hey, I was here, I've seen this, that, X, Y, and Z, I've had these particular issues. But being able to come out on the other side, and also what helped motivate them to get there, because it's usually a process, not just flipping a switch. So what helped them get there along the process? I 100% agree with that. And now I'm going to start trying to find out how to make that happen. So appreciate it.
The other part I'd love to see is how they got there, because that's another thing I think is not done very well either. You go to the briefings, and it's like the same thing as if you're watching the news. When you watch the news and you see something terrible happen on there, right? You see like a school shooting, or you see something terrible on the news. You're like, wouldn't happen to me. Like, not at my school, not in my, city, not in my state, fill in the blank, or natural disaster, hits Florida and you live in Oregon. You're like, well, not me. And so I wonder, like, when you sit in those things, you didn't see how the person got there. You always assume, like, they, were weak, or, these negative connotations we have with they got there, but it was probably a process to get there, right? And I think we've started to touch on that. I think even in your class, we touched on those risk factors and how they can compile, but having someone come up there and tell that story, I think would really help, because it's, the work is stressful, then it's the long hours, then it's someone passes away, and then they run out of money, and that, that's how people get there. They don't just randomly wake up one day and feel like the worst day of their life. And so having, that connection to other people, again, back to connection, I think that would help a lot, seeing, okay, it was a steps, down this path to get me there, and so I think that would help starting to connect people, because they're like, I think you sit through, it won't get me, I'm okay, I got some stuff, but it's not too bad, I'll just keep going. But I wonder if you saw someone that looks just like you and just had a couple things, and then a couple things turned into, 5 or 10 things, and then that's how they got there. So I think opening and closing would be great.
Yeah. So now I get to talk about the new training. You kind of learn about some of the things that go into suicide prevention, and one of those things is the amount of stuff that kind of combines before we get to thoughts of suicide or suicide behaviors. And some of those things could be biological factors, identity factors, physiological, psychological, and then we're talking about like history. So, for instance, someone who was adopted or didn't have a close-knit family might react to things differently down the line that might not affect somebody else who had a strong background, who has a strong family system, things of that nature. Psychological factors. Some of us have mental disorders, mental issues. Some of us are functioning, and some of us have things that we need assistance for. We need therapy and things of that nature. So there's a lot that goes into that before we even get to the life circumstance or life issue that occurs. So everything's all good until X happened, or like you talked about, a series of things that happened. So I think part of that too, again, talk about building connection and having those connections with people and understanding not just, hey, I had a money problem, but no, hey, look, I grew up in this type of family. I grew up in this type of family. We didn't talk about money. We didn't talk about that being a thing. And so I came in right out of the high school. I've always had a paycheck. A paycheck comes on the 1st and 15th. I'm used to doing X, Y, and Z. I've never had an issue until something happened. And so now we have a whole background on the individual and a whole background on not just the situation that led there, but on their situation that brought them to that point. And so I think being able to have that confidence and having those examples to not only just say what that risk factor was or what those warning signs were, but here is the individual that got there. So definitely agree.
Yeah, another thing that is one of my bigger pet peeves. I don't think I have very many, but one thing I'll remember probably for the rest of my life. And it's odd that you remember certain things that are just random. So in OTS, we had a briefer get up there and said, you'll have no bad days. You're going to poison the well, you're going to bring down the unit and things like that. And that's just always drove me completely nuts. Because what I've done now is when I first take over a flight or things like that, I do an initial briefing. It's like the 3 slides or your core values or things like that. It's a brief overview of you because I don't want to get too deep right off the bat. But after 3 or 4 months, I try to go back in and have a little more in depth and build that vulnerability and kind of talk through some stuff where I was raised in Section 8. It was me and my mom against the world. And, I have the death of a parent, most of my grandparents, a divorce, I co-parent. And, I go through all these things, and it's in no way to be a negative Nancy, but I want there to be less of a divide. And kind of like you had touched about earlier, we got contractors, civilians, E and O. And, maybe it's because I'm prior E, but sometimes I feel like the gap and divide between E and O is bigger than it should be. There has to be structure. There's chain of command. There's respect. Absolutely. But it doesn't have to be as big. I mean, most enlisted at this point have degrees. So the thing that used to separate us was this level of school. I'm like, we all have pretty much the same degree at this point. And so I go back in and try and open that up because I've heard so many times the open door policy. The physical door is open. The physical door is open. But I have been with multiple commanders where I am not stepping in to have that conversation. Or sure, sometimes I'm a little frustrated because I feel like the shirt is more there for people that are in trouble. But I guess that's a side note I won't go down. But you have to build that connection and have a little bit of vulnerability. And I think, now Brene Brown and other people are jumping into that vulnerability. There's that difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy, poor you, that sucks. Like I could see how, that's not great. But empathy, like you had said, you have that connection, you hold the space, and you don't know exactly what they're going through. And I will, I bring those things up and I say at the end of that briefing, like, I'm not saying I've been through everything. I'm just saying we can sit down and chat. I will sit here and listen to it. I will do 2 things. I will either listen or try to fix it. Just let me know. Like I will start making phone calls for the people I know, the resources around base. Or if you want to vent and dump out of here, like that's fine too. But there has to be a little bit of a, bridging of that gap. The E and O divide does not need to be that big. We're all people, civilian contractors across the board, all going through some stuff. So open up a little bit. I think, that teaching at OTS is just insane to me. Like, oh, you'll be strong every day. No, we're all people.
100%. We are all people. I laugh when we hear little stuff that they teach the officers. Like there was this but there was this old officer book that had gotten pushed online like last year, a couple years ago, and it basically said that you're the officer and the enlisted don't know any better. They're Neanderthals and they need your leadership to be able to guide them. Without you, they are lost. And I just look at little stuff like that. Now it's like, is there really that big of a difference in how we're being taught versus how you guys are being taught? But no, definitely. And I think it's important to break down that barrier because, as you said, if they're teaching you guys that there are no bad days, you'll be the rock, you'll be strong. Imagine that airman coming in that doesn't have interactions with officers or even higher ranking individuals. They don't know how to engage and break down that divide. So if you want that wall to come down, you have to be the one to start pulling that wall down because they don't know how to engage that. And if they do try to engage it, they're going to come in drop kicking the wall and you're like, whoa, wait, time out. Wait a minute. Slow down a second, But so I think it's definitely a very good job that you actually get out there and do that. And not everybody gets out there and does it. I brought this up in one of the trainings before. Similar like you said, it's like the door is open. And I asked the question, it's like, how many of you have an open door policy? And they're like, it was like, cool. How many people come through the door? Why? Why don't they come through the door? And some of that has to get looked at as not necessarily what you're doing, but what environment are you setting up for these individuals? For some, they don't come through the door because you got a bunch of NCOs and lower level officers underneath you that are handling that at that level. Oh, that's not what the DOC said. The DOC says that there's a problem and you need to look at it. And I bring up the DOCs for those who may not have it. It's basically an annual survey on the climate and things that are going on in the unit, or the situation, or the organization, so that we have to do every year that comes up. So it's one of those other things that we do to try to get a feel for what are some things that we might not be identifying that we can work on. So I bring that up to say that it's important to get out there. We had at Herbie, we had a lot of issues going on, and our squadron came in and basically did sensing sessions across the board, lower tier, middle tier, and leadership. So working in the section and in flight, I got to get the last briefing, which is where they basically, they said, hey, we're going to take whatever issues in place you guys have, but we just want to show you what have the airmen been saying, what have the NCOs been saying. And so we had that situation, and I like the fact where I was looking at it and I said, I'm not surprised. None of this, all of this that I'm looking at, nothing's like, oh, how dare they? No, it's like a lot of this are issues that we've either been working on or that have already been addressed, And I was telling my counterpart, I was like, I feel good at the fact of nothing was a surprise to us. That means we're at least listening and paying attention and aware of kind of what the climate is in the section. And can we fix it? Working on it, but but it was definitely one of those things, and I think that's kind of the start, regardless of where you work, military aside, regardless of where you work, having a feel for what kind of environment are you setting and in your sections, or what kind of environment are you allowing to be set in your circumstances, in your environments, and how do you go out and attack that? It's like, hey, people are scared to talk to leadership. Well, I'm going to go out here and start trying to break some of these walls down. I want to be able to connect with people. I want people to know that, hey, when I get home, I take 10 minutes to take my boots off too. It's a thing. It's, it's a thing. Hey, I get stuck in traffic on 98. It sucks. I get it. I hate the fact that all the gates are closed for some reason.
I can't believe we're down to one. That's insane. If security forces is listen, please help me understand how one gate's okay. I don't understand. I don't. One. It's a whole base.
It's like, hey, insane. I get stuck in traffic. No helicopter comes to pick up the officers. We get stuck in traffic too.
We out there.
And I've seen those conversations happen in lower levels, and I think they're good. They're positive, and they help create an environment for people to open up and have those conversations. Hey, look, this person's having X, Y, and Z problem. It's not just one person or one airman that knows about it. There's like 3 or 4 people that understand and are trying to help work through it. And I think that's a powerful thing to see. Outside of suicide prevention training, that's kind of the environments we want to set to make it so that individuals have resources and have avenues to go through, have avenues to talk, so they don't feel like they are out of options.
That makes sense. I got one final question for you. What advice would you give to someone who is struggling silently but just hasn't reached out yet? They're listening right now. What would you say?
If you're struggling right now, understand that's normal. Understand that what you're going through is a real experience. There are people out here that are willing to help. I don't know where your location is. I don't know where you are. But there are people out here that want to help and assist and help you get through it. Right now, you might feel like there's no other options, no other ways out. You don't see any of the exits. You're driving down the freeway, you're barreling 100 miles per hour, you're low on gas, you're running on E, and you don't know where to go. Understand that there are people and resources available to help you find a safe exit, refill your tank. Understand that there are people that care. You are a human being going through a human experience. And it's okay. You're not a bad person. You're not a failure. You're a human being. And when you get up tomorrow, you will have an opportunity to continue to move forward. So I implore anybody that's out there that may feel like they are at that point, they may feel like they don't know which way to turn, to reach out. The exits are there. Just because you cannot see them does not mean they do not exist. And all it takes is for you to keep moving forward. Reach out. Phone a friend. Call a family member. Get online, find resources. Connect. If you're in the States, 988 is a good resource. If you happen to be in the UK, there's a phone number for the Samaritans. Give them a call. Hold a conversation. Let's talk about options. Because we're all here and we all just want to do the best job we can possibly do. All right? So
absolutely. And if you want to call Dr. Pagan or me, we'll be around. I remember there was a time when my dad passed away and I was scrolling through my phone and I could not find somebody to call. I felt like I was going to be bugging someone, that I was going to be bothering someone. I scrolled through. I have, I don't know, 200 or 300 people in my phone. I didn't want to bother anybody. I didn't want to be a burden. And I remember that feeling, and it was the worst feeling I think I've ever had in my entire life. I can't think of anything that was as bad as that. And so if there's ever a time someone wants to chat, it's the middle of the night or whatever it is, I will take that call. I might be do not disturb, so just hit it like 3 times and I'll pick up. But I would never want somebody to have that feeling again. It's the absolute worst. So call somebody. 100%. We're here, but it's the worst.
Definitely shoot a message. Like, I don't want to downplay internet or social media or text messages because I know that's how a lot of people communicate right now. Reach out, man. Just reach out. There are people willing to help walk with you until you can find a safe exit. There are people willing to walk with you so that you are not by yourself while you're going through the experience that you're having. Okay? So that's
absolutely
that's major.
Well, thanks for coming out. I hope you had a good time, Demetrius.
Man, I love this stuff. I
know we could chat for hours, right?
We're talking about suicide prevention. I love this stuff. Yeah, no, but I like being able to have the conversation.
Love the people.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a people person. It's to my detriment, but definitely being able to have the conversation I think is important. And this is a fantastic platform that you have to be able to have the conversation. So I'm going to say something real quick, and you can cut it later if you want. Have you seen the new Transformers movie?
No. There's a new one? Bumblebee?
No, there's the animated one.
No, I want to.
So I bring this up.
Key and Peele guy?
Yeah, he's actually, I think he's in it. I think he's Bumblebee.
Right, I think he is. That's awesome.
But I listened to one of your previous podcasts, and I believe it was the chaplain. He was talking about talk about moral injury. So when you get an opportunity, to watch the movie, something happens to Megatron, and when I saw it, I was like, ooh, moral injury. Just whenever you see it, shoot it out. Tell me if you feel the same way. But it's definitely one of those things. And I bring that up simply to not only build connection, but simply to say that what you're doing is being able to open up these conversations and getting people to think about these concepts and things like that. So keep doing it. It's an awesome job. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, send an email, I guess.
Yeah, I can post the email.
Why not? I'm going to get a lot of random emails. That'll be fun.
Hopefully.
So, yeah. Other than that, just keep pressing what you're doing, making the Air Force better. So,
absolutely. Thank you for the kind words. Yeah, I'm here just to try to blow this stigma up. I lost my grandma as a kid, and I think it was just being able to not be able to chat through it. You know, we're going to keep having these serious conversations. We're going to make it normal. You know, it's the same as getting a workout in. We talk about workouts with our body, but sometimes when it comes to these mind things, we just get a little weird about it. And, you know, I'm kind of weird, and so we'll just keep making it weird until it's normal. So I encourage listeners to share their thoughts on social media. We got the Facebook, we got Buzzsprout, we got YouTube. I just moved over to TikTok. I'm old, so I barely know how it works. But check it out on there. You'll see Dr. Pagan's short clips, 1 to 2 minutes, over on TikTok, if he's okay with that. But I love you all. See ya.